And in this next part here, we're looking at associative arrays a little bit more carefully. You can see here that we can have additional white space around the values, and these will get taken away. So if we try to align this over with the browser on the right-hand side, it says arrays can have keys and use any number of spaces, but not tabs. And here's that text here. And if we look at this array, we see that the value of 1 is 1, 2 is 2, 3 is 3, and it completely ignores the white space around it. So this can be helpful if you want to align the values in a vertical grid, like we're doing here. Now we can also do associative arrays inline, which we're doing right here. And the way we do that is by using the curly brackets. We use a colon between the key and the value, just like we did when they're on separate lines, and then we separate them out with commas. So this is very similar to using a simple array, but we're using curly brackets instead of square brackets, and then we use the key value separated with a colon instead of just the value. Okay, I'm going to scroll down a little bit to the bottom here, and I'll also go over to the browser here and scroll down a little too. In a YAML file, we can nest arrays infinitely if we want to. So here we have a key, and then the value is an associative array with a key being heron, and then the value being an array itself. And then we have another key, and the value is another array. And we can continue down this route as long as we want to. And you can see how we're using multi-line arrays and also inline arrays in the same set of arrays. And if we look at this converted over, so we're looking for and oh my, we can nest, and we can see that over here. You can see we have an array, the key is heron, the value is all of these attributes here, and that aligns with what we have here. And then we have swallow, whose value then has an array, and we can see that layout here. Now if you imagine creating this array in PHP, there's going to be a lot of brackets, and at the very end we're going to have this series of brackets, and I don't know if you've ever had this problem, but it's very common to miss a bracket and end up just messing up your code and not knowing why, but it's just because you're missing that last bracket in that last array and you didn't realize it. So among other things, YAML helps us get around that nested bracket syntax that can be so troublesome. Okay, in this next set of lines, we're showing how we can do an inline array within an inline array. So you see that this with an array inside is an array, but with the square brackets, we're inside of another array. Now this can get hairy because of that whole nested bracket thing, but if we're doing just one array within an array, that might be appropriate sometimes. You might see this syntax. And if we look at how this is rendered in PHP, let's look for we can do inline nesting as well, and that's right here. You can see that we have an array, and the first array is an array, so we're looking at this array right now. The first item is the text and array, and then the next item is another array, so that's what we're looking at right here, with an array inside, with an array inside right here. And then we have our second array, which is structured very similarly. Now finally, there's a couple of special characters we can use in order to preserve white space or take away white space. So the pipe right here is a white space preserver. So you can see how we have text on multiple lines here. And if we wanted these all to be a single value, but preserve all of the white space in there, that pipe will do that for us. So if we look at the output here of white space preserver, you see the pipe is like a here doc where, and then there's a new line. So that aligns up with what we're seeing here. The extra white space in there is preserved. And then there's another new line, which is right here. And then finally we have the end. And then if we want to use multiple lines, but we want them to be compiled into a single line of text, we can use the right bracket. So you can see multiple lines here that are being converted to a single lined string here. All right, now you don't need to remember this entire syntax, but I wanted to expose you to this so you got a sense of the extent of YAML. This is almost it in terms of the syntax. It's really simple. We're just dealing with arrays. And so YAML includes the syntax that allows us to define those arrays in various readable formats. So again, for simple arrays, I'm going to scroll up. We have multiple lines, or you can do it inline. And then for associative arrays, we do multiple lines with a colon between the key and value, or a single line with curly braces and a colon between the key and value. And even though we covered a bunch of other stuff, for the most part, you're just going to see that array syntax in YAML files.